Good morning and welcome to Sabi Private Game Reserve. We are here with WWF doing a wonderful virtual safari. We are going to be talking you through some of the cool things that we see here and some of the conservation initiatives run by this incredible organization. My name is Richard de Gouveia and this is Matt Meyer.
Hello everyone. So yes, here we are in this amazing, incredible reserve in South Africa, and over the next couple of days we're going to be looking for some of these incredible animals that we are so often able to see while we're on safari, and we're going to bring them straight to you at home. So rhinos in this environment that we're in at the moment in Sabi Private Game Reserve in South Africa in the Kruger National Park, they form an integral part of this environment and this ecosystem, and they hold a role, what we call a keystone species, whereby there are a lot of roll-on and a lot of lower down, if you want to call them that, animals that rely on them for their survival. And so by protecting an animal like a rhino, you're essentially protecting the environment in which they live in. They are extensively poached for their horn, and we've lost about 70% of the population of rhinos over the course of the last 10 years in this area. We've already saved them from extinction once, where we got the southern white rhino population down to about 200 or 300. And we brought that number up to close on 15 to 18,000, and most of the rest of rhinos across Africa have come from this genetic pool in southern Africa. And so to have to go through all of that again, the resources, the manpower, the time and effort, it will happen, but it would be a lot better if we could use those resources to protect other animals. But in this environment, if you are essentially protecting a rhino, you will be protecting everything else that is in its environment. So you're protecting elephants, you're protecting lions and leopards, and all of the other species in the Greater Kruger Park and any of the reserves that rhinos are in.
Right, so just in front of us here is a male leopard, and I'm over the moon to see this guy, because this male I got the privilege of seeing at the ripe young age of 2 weeks old. And back then his mother, named Nottins, was an incredible female that offered a lot of our leopard sightings, and I got to watch him grow up till he was old enough, and then he left the reserve and went north to go and do things in another place, and he took over a great big territory, had many different females, and now he's returned back to his natal territory right at the age where he's probably tapering off his breeding, and he's probably not going to have too much interaction with ladies anymore. But it's so incredible to see him from this little bundle of fur that could barely walk to this incredibly powerful dominant male that he's turned into now.
So folks, behind us here we have these two male leopards that are, it appears to be that they're in a battle of sorts. In Sabi Game Reserve and in the Sabi Sands, Southern Kruger, this area is known for its incredibly high density of leopards. Male leopards will set up a territory, and essentially they'll have a core territory and then a fringe territory, and those will be heavily protected because obviously inside those territories will be their females that they will then patrol around and protect, and that'll obviously then protect their progeny, their offspring, which is the ultimate goal for any male in the wild. And so typically when two male leopards will meet each other, they will what's called parallel walking, where they'll walk shoulder to shoulder, sometimes for days at a time, sussing each other out, seeing who is stronger, who is not. And sometimes it leads to claws and teeth and fur flying everywhere, and other times they'll realize that they're evenly matched, it's not worth the conflict, it's not worth potential injury, and they'll go their separate ways. And that will kind of be their boundary that they've set up. So we're just going to see what happens over here over the next couple of hours.
Right, so it has officially been 4 hours of us being with these leopards. They have shouted at each other, growled at each other. There's actually one calling there, not the bird, the leopard. And unfortunately, there comes a time where you've got to weigh up whether we're going to be here till midnight or if they'll only fight tomorrow. So we're going to head home and call it a good day of spending time with two male leopards fighting for territory, even though it was a shouting match most of the day.
It's been a passion of mine for many, many years, right from when I was a little girl. My parents and I often used to travel into the Kruger National Park just for school holidays, and my passion just grew from there. I was a very outdoorsy kid and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I remember when I was about 8 or 9, we took a safari up to Tula, and I was completely besotted with the elephants, with the guide and what they did and their environment that we were just absorbed in. It was wonderful. And my mom reminds me on a daily basis, it was then that you told me you wanted to be a guide, you wanted to be a ranger then, and I think for many years that just kind of stuck, and it took some time for me to really realize that this is a sustainable job and it was something that I could do for a long period of time. So back in 2017 that I decided that I would take the jump to shift from a teaching career into being a guide and being out in here and working in conservation and guiding. This industry has come such a far way from when it started 40, 50 years ago, being a completely male-dominated industry, and it's becoming more of a profession now, which is allowing women to break into this field with, plenty of confidence. I mean, the handful that are found in this industry, I think it's very important to empower women all around you and let them know that they're quite capable of doing just about anything that a man can do in this industry, and is definitely onwards and upwards, allowing women to thrive in this industry alongside male counterparts. Women just have this very soft, gentle nature, especially when it comes to the industry, whereas it's always been very known for its rough and tumble, khaki men and shorts and dirt, and so I think we bring a very soft, gentle side to it, which is important. We rely on open skies and open borders for us to receive visitors and share this world with them. During that period, obviously having everything locked down, we weren't able to see anybody come over and share nature with them. So it has been difficult and it has been tough, but we're very lucky in terms that 2021 seems to be holding a lot of great possibilities, and the future is looking bright and things are starting to open up again, so we're on the up and rise.
So one of WWF's primary projects within the Southern Africa wilderness area is a project called cheetah. It is a vitally important project whereby WWF is trying to train up and integrate communities into this natural environment. Historically, a lot of the areas here have had forced removals and people moved away from their homelands in order to create these parks. And then there's a great disconnect put up between communities and these areas by putting up fences. One, to keep animals inside, and two, to keep people out. And this has created a lot of tension. So what WWF tries to do is to educate these people, to bring in incredible knowledge, to train up people from local communities to become rangers and field guides, to bring in crime scene tests to be able to ensure that any animal trafficking can be correctly enforced and prosecuted at the later stage. In general, poaching and wildlife trafficking have an incredibly negative effect on a country's ecosystem. In the greater sense, it promotes corruption, it promotes all sorts of problematic things from the top down. So by instilling the right laws, the right understanding, and the right resources, WWF is fighting this from the top down. And it has an incredible impact on local communities by creating jobs, by creating a connection between the local communities and these environments to uplift and sustain these areas and the people that surround them for many generations to come. All right, so we've just had an amazing sighting of some southern ground hornbills. These incredibly large birds were sitting up in the tree. The juvenile was calling from the top. Mom and dad then flew in and they moved around. Now, for its size and as beautiful as this bird is, it's highly and critically endangered. Throughout Kruger a few years ago, the birds numbered just 500 individuals left in the entire park. So a very, very small number. And these guys, as much as we see that juvenile there, they have a very low ability to raise chicks. They successfully raise a chick between every 2 to 9 years. So it takes quite a long time to get this right. And every time they lay eggs, they will lay 2 eggs. The first baby that gives birth, that hatches, will get a special antibody milk that the mother will regurgitate for it. The second baby will get none, which dooms that second baby to death. Now, what has been happening lately as a form of conservation is that an organization known as Endangered Wildlife Trust have been going in, been taking these second eggs and then hand rearing these birds to get the populations up. Now, as big birds, they need big places to build nests. Their smaller cousins, the yellow-billed hornbill, red-billed hornbills, hornbills like that, all nest in holes in trees. These guys are no different. What ends up happening is they need very big holes in very big trees, and they will make these things there. Now, I've been fortunate to be part of some of the research that went on with these animals, and we used to move out into Kruger National Park at 4 a.m., moving around, waiting for their distinctive call, which is this doo-doo, doo-doo, ooh, ooh. And this call travels for large distances, and it allowed us to go out and find nests and be able to mark them, GPS locate them, and find out different individuals that were out there. Incredible birds in terms of their diet, massively strong bill, which they were able to crack through a tortoise's shell and eat the tortoise. And one of the sightings that I've had, which was probably one of the best bird sightings I've ever had, was a family of 5 that had found the nest of a puff adder, which is a highly venomous snake here in Africa, and they each had a puff adder in their mouth as they were walking down the road. Quite a phenomenal thing to see, but so beautiful to see these birds out in the wild, and obviously great to see it with a chick. We can't talk
talk about the WWF in Africa without introducing their very first project that was started on black rhinos in Africa in the 1960s. When the WWF first came in here, that was their species of focus. And that has evolved over the last half a century now into the early 2000s, 2003, 2004, into the amalgamation of what they have called the Black Rhino Range Expansion Project. They have effectively and successfully expanded the range of black rhinos by about 200,000 hectares. So we're looking at about 500,000 acres, and they have increased numbers by over 100 individuals that have been born in those wild areas. And essentially what they would do is they would take a black rhino and from any high-risk reserve and remove it and take it into another reserve. They also then allow genetics to be moved from fragmented populations, from fragmented conservation areas, because that is essentially something that would have historically taken place, whereby enabling a black rhino bull who is, let's say, in this part, in this section, to move across a couple of 100 miles or a couple of dozen miles into another section, and thereby moving his genetics around with him. However, when we have now created these reserve put fences around, we can't do that. So that is an incredibly successful project that has been ongoing now for the last 20 years, but had its original inception in the 60s when the WWF first came here to Africa.
So as a company, as Sabi as a whole, we are very involved within the community around us, and you know, from our point of view, they are a part of our environment. The people that are in the community form part of our home and our family, and I think it's very important to encourage them and uplift them in ways that they will only benefit not only themselves but this natural environment as well. If we can raise more people to be conservation minded and think in that way, we're going to do the future so much good in the long run. I think education is an important thing. So when I first started here, and obviously COVID has set that back ever so slightly, but we look forward to embarking on this journey with them again, is bringing children from the community back into the reserve. So taking them on safaris and really just allowing them to explore this natural environment is super important, because where else are they going to learn it from if not the people that are here, based here 24/7, that have the knowledge and the experience to give back to them. And in doing so, you're then teaching them about conservation. You are teaching them about, you know, the possibility of becoming a guide one day. And that upliftment is what will make our world better in the future. We see it within our own company now. We've got trackers that have been raised up to become trainee rangers and growing their, you know, their dreams and their hope to one day make a difference in the world. And I think if we continue to see that from young ages and filtering through our industry, it's going to have such a huge impact. Come 10 years from now, we'll see a completely different environment, which is what we want. We want people who are invested into our natural world.
I'm from Belfast, one of the community next to the Sabi Center, close to Huntington. I started to come here, it was 2013 at Sabi, and then even since now I'm still here at Sabi. Yeah, I enjoy it because you know, like you're working with the animals, you're learning the behavior of the animals, and also you meet some different people coming from too many countries, and then you have to learn more things from other peoples. Also, when we grow up, we got the kettles, cows outside to the community. Follow the guys, they're taking the cattle out, and then you learn how to track the animals, the footprints for the animals. And then you can know, like if one of the cow, you just go opposite side with the other one, and then you have to learn, because you know you can learn how which way is the direction they're walking, and how you can see the tracks on the ground. If you see some animals outside to the reserve, you have to make sure you report it, and then they will come and fetch it and then bring it back in.
So right around me here we have a sycamore fig. And fig trees are fascinating trees. They are the lifeblood for a lot of animals because these little fruits feed a lot of things. But it has a very interesting symbiotic relationship with one of the smallest creatures out here. It's a tiny little wasp, about 2 millimeters in length, and these little wasps help pollinate these guys. Now, these fruits, when unripened, are the first form of the flowers. The flowers actually live inside here, and what happens is the little wasps comes in through a hole in the bottom here, which for a tiny amount of time, only about 24 hours, does the fruit allow this hole to be open. Now this tiny little wasp comes straight in this hole. It's so tight that she loses her wings and she crawls inside there and lays her eggs. In doing so, she has been covered in pollen, and this pollen then makes the flowers then bloom. And the little babies, the eggs start growing inside there and everything's cool, and the males hatch before the females. And these males then go to their unborn sisters and start mating with the unborn sisters with a penis that is twice the length of his body. It's an incredible thing to think of. So the males then, after mating with these females, their job is to eat holes out, and by the coming in out of these 3 holes, they create a little chamber for the females to get out. Now, every single one of the fig trees in the world has a species specific wasp that pollinates it. So a sycamore fig has a specific sycamore wasp that will go into this one, and they fruit at different times of the years. There isn't a single fruiting time for all the sycamore figs. So when the females come out, they now need to find the next fig tree that's ready to be pollinated. And they do this by using volatiles, which is a sense of smell or a pheromone that the tree actually gives off, that these wasps can then pick up and fly off to get to the next tree to start the life cycle once again. Just remember that this is a mutually exclusive relationship. If the tree were wiped out, the wasp would be wiped out, and vice versa. So an incredibly intricate interaction between 2 incredible species.
The biggest effects that we see on conservation through tourism is we always need to remember that, tourism is where the funds come from that enable us to conserve this area and look after it the way that we do. But here at Sabi Sabi, we're in a very fortunate position that we are a family-owned business, and they've been able to look after us and the reserve and the conservation funds and everything that goes into it this entire time. So from that aspect, we're incredibly blessed, and we're very, very lucky. And with tourism slowly coming back, we can definitely instill that positivity and remind people that we are safe, we're here, we're ready for travel. We're ready for people to travel. We're open and we're waiting. We're excited.
We've got a beautiful herd of elephants behind us. They're a bit split and moved around. I'm busy feeding on grass. Elephants are an endangered species that requires a lot of protection and is still hunted on a daily basis. They believe that there's up to 30 elephants a day that are poached around Africa. So there is a huge number of poachings, all for this ivory, and the ivory forms a decorative form that has been used from pianos to carvings to knife handles to all sorts of different things. Because there's such a demand for this substance that's so decorative, it has been termed white gold, and the poaching is a huge issue. Now, beyond that, their role as elephants, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place where people believe that most reserves are overpopulated with elephants, but Africa is underpopulated and the poaching still remains an issue. The reason why overpopulation in a reserve becomes a huge issue is because the average adult like this female will push over between 3 to 4 trees daily. Now, the role that they play in this is to clear woody species from an area and make space for grassy species to grow, which keeps a mixed bushveld moving along. But where there are too many, or they're enclosed within an area, what we end up with is this overpopulation and too many trees being taken out at the same time. So there have been so many different controversial ways of conservation. The first one is obviously to cull. And for many years here within the Greater Kruger National Park, there was a lot of culling that was done. So animals were taken off. It was believed that the Kruger National Park held maybe space for around 17,000 elephants, and anything over that was over the carrying capacity of the land. Now, previously, when there were no national parks and there were no fences, elephants, if there was a drought, would move to new areas. These migratory paths would mean that babies like this little guy would have had to have traveled hundreds of kilometers to get to the next water source, which means the weak would have been weeded out, which means the bush in the areas that was under threat of drought would have had a chance to recover. Now we've put fences around these places and we get stuck with this issue. So in short, one of the biggest things that WWF are doing are trying to manage first of all, the poaching of the animals, one by education and making sure that people are taking care and understand the ecological impact that elephants have on an area. Secondly, to create great relationships with the community so that they can understand the benefits of what's going on. Ensuring laws and policies are put in place in order to ensure that there is no trafficking of these goods, and that bribery and corruption and all of the likes that come with trades like these illegal trades of ivory and rhino horn cease to exist. And then thirdly, to make sure that the areas are looked after and that the numbers are managed in different ways. I know in different areas they actually use contraception to slow the birth rate of animals, and what they'll do is they'll actually contracept a female for around 2 years and then allow her out of that contraception cycle so that she can have a baby. Because these are such emotionally complex creatures, having them not having babies for the rest of their lives will have a very negative impact on their social structures. So overall, the beauty of elephants is seeing them in the wild spaces, but management of those wild spaces and the people and communities around them needs to be looked after and managed in order to create a happy space for all.
So that concludes our awesome virtual safari. On behalf of Matt and I, we would like to thank you for joining us today for this installment of the Insider series. It was such a pleasure to take you along with us through Sabi Private Game Reserve. And as Ali said, we are ready for travelers to return. So when you're ready, we hope to see you back out in the bush. If you have any questions, please send them to events@wwfus.org, and the team will be sure to respond as best they can. As usual, the team at WWF will be following up with an email that includes the link to a recording of today's program, so you can watch it again and share it with your friends and family. In that email, you will also find a survey about your experience. We want to make sure we adjust and improve future events where we can. Please be honest. Finally, please mark your calendars for the next installment of WWF Insider Series. On Thursday, April 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Kate Newman will join us to discuss her work on sustainable infrastructure and WWF's vision for a future where infrastructure development continues to meet the food, water, and energy needs of a growing global population, while maintaining critical habitats and biodiversity. And keep checking your email inbox and wwf.events.org for more information on future installments of the Insiders series. Thanks again for joining us and for your commitment to conservation and WWF. See you next time.
Your passion and generosity are helping build a more resilient future for nature and people. And while we are all staying home and staying safe, your commitment is still helping to make conservation progress happen all over the world. From the U.S. Northern Great Plains to the Arctic, from the Eastern Himalayas to the savannas of Africa, your commitment fuels work that safeguards local communities, iconic wildlife, and vast land and waterscapes. Together, we're developing innovative solutions to ensure the health of our planet.
Your support is helping to take us to a whole new level in our work.
Support that people like you have provided has achieved so much.
Thank you for your generous support.
Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you for your support.
We can't do the work that we do alone.
We're doing all of this great work at WWF. We have all of these amazing supporters out there. And it is really nice to be able to connect with the people that enable us to do this work.